The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Kandahar as Elena Rodriguez stepped off the military transport vehicle. Her civilian clothes, a simple tan blouse and cargo pants, drew curious glances from the soldiers milling about the forward operating base. At 28, she appeared unremarkable to the hardened warriors surrounding her. No military insignia adorned her clothing, no weapon hung from her shoulder, and her petite frame seemed almost fragile among the towering soldiers in full combat gear. "Another journalist," muttered Sergeant Jake Morrison to his squad mate as they watched Elena navigate toward the command tent. "Great. Just what we need out here." The assumption wasn't unreasonable. Civilian contractors, aid workers, and media personnel regularly rotated through the base, each believing they understood the realities of war from their brief visits. Most lasted a few weeks before requesting transfer back to safer zones, their romantic notions of conflict quickly shattered by the harsh truths of combat. Elena had heard the whispers as she passed groups of soldiers. Their dismissive glances and barely concealed eye rolls were nothing new. For the past 3 years, she had endured similar treatment at bases across Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. The assumption always remained the same. She was just another civilian playing at understanding military life. What none of them knew was that Elena Rodriguez had spent 12 years as one of the most feared snipers in modern military history. Her service record, classified at the highest levels, told a story that would have silenced every skeptic on that dusty base. 73 confirmed kills across 4 deployments, each shot taken from distances that tested the very limits of ballistic science. Her longest confirmed kill, a shot that had become legend among a select few in special operations circles, measured exactly 3,247 meters, earned during a mission in the mountains of Afghanistan that officially never happened. But today, she was simply Elena Rodriguez, civilian consultant for the Defense Intelligence Agency. Her cover story was mundane by design, a logistics coordinator reviewing supply chain efficiency for remote outposts. The truth was far more complex and infinitely more dangerous. Colonel Marcus Webb stood as Elena entered the command tent. Unlike the enlisted personnel outside, Webb knew exactly who she was and why she was there. The mission briefing in his hands contained details that would never see the light of day in official reports. "Ms. Rodriguez," Webb said with barely concealed tension, "I trust your journey was uneventful." "As uneventful as any flight into a war zone can be, Colonel," Elena replied, her voice carrying a calm authority that seemed at odds with her civilian appearance. "I assume you've read my requirements." Webb nodded grimly. "I have. Though I must say, your request for such specific equipment raises questions about exactly what kind of logistics review you're conducting." Elena's expression remained neutral. "The kind that requires precision, Colonel, nothing more, nothing less." The truth was that Elena hadn't requested standard office supplies or transportation manifests. Her equipment list read like a sniper's dream arsenal: custom rifles, specialized ammunition, advanced optics, and range-finding equipment that pushed technological boundaries. Each item was necessary for the real reason she had been sent to this remote outpost. Intelligence had identified a high-value target operating in the region. Ahmad Hassan al-Rashid, a bomb maker responsible for countless civilian deaths, had been conducting operations from a compound approximately 3 kilometers from the base. Traditional assault methods had failed repeatedly, the terrain provided too many escape routes, and the civilian population in surrounding areas made airstrikes impossible. The mission required surgical precision, a single, perfectly placed shot from an impossible distance. It required someone with skills that existed in maybe a dozen people worldwide. Elena Rodriguez was the only one available. "Your cover will hold as long as necessary," Webb continued, sliding a folder across the table. "But I have to ask, are you certain about the distance involved? Our intelligence puts the target location at over 3,000 meters. Even our best marksmen consider that beyond practical range. Elena's lips curved into the faintest smile. Colonel, practical range is a relative concept. What matters is mathematical possibility combined with environmental factors and shooter capability. The distance isn't the problem. It's the variables that make it interesting. Webb had read Elena's classified files. He knew about her service with the 75th Ranger Regiment, her selection for the Army's elite sniper program, and her eventual recruitment into black operations that didn't officially exist. But reading about impossible shots on paper was different from meeting the person who had taken them. "The equipment you requested will be available within 6 hours," Webb said. "My men have prepared a position approximately 2 clicks northeast of the base. It provides clear sight lines to the target area while maintaining your cover as a civilian contractor." Elena nodded. "What about local security?" "Standard patrols will continue as scheduled. From the outside, it will appear you're conducting routine surveys of supply routes. No one will question a civilian with measuring equipment and observation gear." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Elena would establish her position during normal daylight hours, conduct legitimate logistics assessments to maintain her cover, and wait for the target to present himself. Intelligence suggested al-Rashid maintained a routine, appearing on his compound's balcony each morning at sunrise for approximately 10 minutes. One shot, one opportunity, 3,000 meters of mountain air between hunter and prey. As Elena left the command tent, she noticed the same soldiers who had dismissed her arrival now watched with mild curiosity. To them, she remained nothing more than another civilian contractor, probably reviewing paperwork while braver souls conducted the real business of warfare. Sergeant Morrison approached as she organized her equipment. "Ma'am, I'm supposed to escort you to the survey location. Are you sure you have everything you need?" "That's some serious gear for measuring supply routes." Elena hefted a case containing her custom rifle system. To Morrison, it looked like standard surveying equipment. "Precision is important in my line of work, Sergeant. Small mistakes can have large consequences." "If you say so, ma'am. Though I have to wonder what kind of logistics work requires that level of precision equipment." "The kind that saves lives, Sergeant. The kind that saves lives." The 2-kilometer hike to the observation position took 40 minutes across rocky terrain that would challenge most civilians. Elena moved with an economy of motion that spoke to years of military training, though Morrison attributed her fitness to civilian hiking experience rather than combat conditioning. The position Webb's men had prepared was perfect, a natural hide among large boulders that provided complete concealment while offering unobstructed views of the target area. From this vantage point, the compound appeared as a small cluster of buildings in the distance, barely visible to the naked eye. Elena began unpacking her equipment with methodical precision. Each piece was carefully checked and positioned according to procedures burned into muscle memory through thousands of hours of practice. The rifle itself was a work of art, a custom bolt-action system chambered in .338 Lapua Magnum, equipped with a scope capable of resolving human-sized targets at extreme distances. "Impressive setup," Morrison commented, still unaware of what he was actually observing. "Must be some important measurements you're taking." "Every measurement is important, Sergeant. The difference between success and failure often comes down to millimeters." As Morrison departed to continue his patrol duties, Elena began the real work. Range estimation using laser measurement confirmed the distance to the compound at 3,247 meters, slightly longer than her record shot but well within theoretical capability. Wind assessment required careful observation of vegetation movement at multiple points between her position and the target. Temperature, humidity, and barometric pressure all factored into the complex calculations required for success. The mathematics of extreme-range shooting bordered on art as much as science. Bullet drop over that distance would measure in meters rather than centimeters. Wind drift could push the projectile several feet off course if not properly compensated. Even the Earth's rotation, the Coriolis effect, would influence bullet flight over such extreme distances. Elena spent the remainder of the day conducting legitimate logistics assessments while simultaneously preparing for her real mission. She photographed supply routes, documented transportation bottlenecks, and compiled reports that would satisfy any scrutiny of her cover story. But her primary focus remained on the environmental conditions that would affect her shot. As evening approached, soldiers on patrol began returning to base. Several stopped to check on the civilian contractor working alone in the rocks. "How's the survey going, ma'am?" asked Corporal Lewis, a young soldier barely out of basic training. "Very productive," Elena replied, adjusting her scope for the 100th time that day. "I'm learning quite a bit about the challenges of operating in this environment." "Must be boring work compared to what we do out here," Lewis said with the casual arrogance of youth. Elena looked up from her equipment. "Every job has its challenges, Corporal. The key is being prepared when it matters most." What Lewis couldn't know was that Elena had taken her first life before his 18th birthday. While he was attending high school dances and worrying about college applications, she was eliminating targets in environments that would have terrified seasoned combat veterans. Her 73 confirmed kills represented 73 threats eliminated, 73 lives saved among her fellow soldiers. The record she was most proud of wasn't the longest shot or the most difficult conditions. It was a rescue mission in Syria where insurgents had captured 3 American contractors. Elena's position had been compromised, forcing her to take 6 consecutive shots while under enemy fire. 6 shots, 6 kills, all at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters. The contractors had returned home to their families because Elena Rodriguez never missed when it mattered. As night fell over the mountains, Elena completed her preparations. Tomorrow morning would bring the opportunity she had traveled halfway around the world to take. Ahmad Hassan al-Rashid would appear on his balcony as intelligence suggested, and Elena would be waiting. The soldiers at the base below went about their evening routines, unaware that salvation lay in the hands of a woman they had dismissed as merely another civilian. Tomorrow would prove that assumptions about capability and courage often proved dangerously wrong. Elena checked her equipment one final time before settling in for the night. 3,247 meters of hostile territory separated her from a target who had killed countless innocents. Tomorrow morning, that distance would become the stage for a shot that would save lives and demonstrate why underestimating Elena Rodriguez was the last mistake many enemies ever made. In the morning, the ghost would hunt once more. Dawn arrived with the subtle shift in temperature that Elena had learned to anticipate during her years of combat operations. The mountain air carried sounds differently at this hour. Voices from the compound below drifted clearly across the 3-kilometer gap that would soon become a killing field. Elena had been awake since 400 hours, conducting final equipment checks and environmental assessments. Sleep had come fitfully, interrupted by the muscle memory of combat that never truly faded. Even in civilian clothes, even with her cover story of logistics coordination, her body remained tuned to the rhythms of warfare. Through her scope, the compound appeared deceptively peaceful. A few guards moved lazily between buildings, their vigilance dulled by months of routine in what they considered a secure location. They had no idea that death watched from an impossible distance, calculating angles and windage with mathematical precision. At 0630 hours, Sergeant Morrison arrived for his scheduled check on the civilian contractor. Elena heard his approach long before he became visible, another skill that civilian logistics coordinators weren't supposed to possess. "Morning, ma'am," Morrison called out as he climbed toward her position. "Hope you slept well out here. Most civilians find the mountains pretty uncomfortable." Elena adjusted her scope's focus while maintaining casual conversation. "The solitude is actually refreshing, Sergeant. It allows for concentration on the task at hand. Morrison settled beside her observation point, still unaware that he was witnessing the final preparations for one of the most technically challenging shots in military history. What exactly are you measuring out there anyway? Seems like a lot of equipment for checking supply routes. Transportation efficiency requires precise data, Elena replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline beginning to flow through her system. A few degrees of miscalculation in route planning can mean the difference between success and failure. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was discussing precision and calculation while preparing to take a human life from a distance that pushed every boundary of ballistic science. The mathematics involved were staggering. Bullet drop over 3,247 meters would exceed 40 feet if not properly compensated. Wind drift could deflect the projectile several feet in any direction. Even air density variations between her position and the target would affect bullet flight. At 0645 hours, movement appeared on the compound's main balcony. Elena's scope tracked the figure emerging from the building's shadows. After months of surveillance, intelligence had confirmed this was Ahmad Hassan al-Rashid's morning routine. 10 minutes of exposure while he surveyed his domain, believing distance and geography provided absolute protection. Movement in the target area, Elena murmured, low enough that Morrison couldn't hear clearly. What's that, ma'am? Just noting movement patterns for the logistics assessment, she replied, her crosshairs settling on the distant figure. Traffic flow analysis requires observing behavioral patterns. Through her scope, al-Rashid appeared as little more than a dark silhouette against the compound's light-colored walls. At this range, positive identification required the powerful optics that Elena had specifically requested for her logistics equipment. The man responsible for countless civilian deaths stood casually on his balcony, protected by what he believed was impossible distance. Elena's breathing settled into the rhythm that had carried her through 73 previous kills. Inhale, half exhale, hold, squeeze. The process was as natural as walking, burned into her nervous system through hundreds of thousands of practice rounds and dozens of actual engagements. Sergeant, she said quietly, I need to take some precise measurements now. Could you maintain radio silence for the next few minutes? Some of this equipment is sensitive to electromagnetic interference. Morrison nodded and moved several meters away, still oblivious to the reality unfolding beside him. Elena's training had taught her to manage witnesses during sensitive operations. Misdirection was often more effective than secrecy. The wind had been steady from the northwest at approximately 8 kilometers per hour for the past 30 minutes. Elena made final adjustments to her scope's elevation and windage dials, compensating for the projectile's flight path through varying air densities and temperatures between her position and the target. At 3,247 meters, the bullet would travel for approximately 4 seconds before impact. During that time, al-Rashid could move, wind conditions could shift, or any number of variables could alter the shot's outcome. Success required perfect timing, flawless execution, and a level of skill that existed in perhaps a dozen people worldwide. Elena had earned her place among that exclusive group through dedication that bordered on obsession. During her active service, she had spent countless hours perfecting techniques that most marksmen never attempted. Her record shot, the one that had earned her the unofficial title Ghost of 32200 meters, had been taken under combat conditions with enemy fire impacting around her position. Through her scope, al-Rashid remained motionless on the balcony. Intelligence reports indicated he typically spent exactly 10 minutes surveying the surrounding area before returning inside. Elena had been in position for 4 minutes. The shot window was rapidly approaching. Environmental conditions optimal, she whispered to herself, a habit developed during solo operations. Wind steady, temperature stable, target stationary. The mathematics of her shot were staggering. The .338 Lapua Magnum cartridge would exit her rifle's barrel at approximately 900 meters per second. Gravity would pull the bullet downward while air resistance gradually reduced its velocity. By the time it reached al-Rashid's position, the projectile would have dropped more than 12 meters from its initial trajectory and slowed to roughly 400 meters per second. Elena's custom rifle had been specifically built for shots like this. The barrel's rifling twist rate, the action's bedding, even the trigger's precise pull weight had been optimized for extreme range accuracy. The scope mounted above combined multiple technologies, laser ranging, ballistic computation, and environmental sensing, into a system that could resolve human-sized targets at distances that challenged human perception. 6 minutes, Elena noted, tracking al-Rashid's movement as he shifted position on the balcony. Target remains exposed, Morrison called out from his position 20 meters away. How much longer for these measurements, ma'am? My patrol schedule has me back at base by 0800. Almost finished, Sergeant. Precision takes time. The final calculations raced through Elena's mind with the speed of years of experience. Elevation adjustment, 52.7 minutes of angle up. Windage correction, 3.2 minutes of angle right. Coriolis effect at this latitude and range, minimal but measurable. Lead time for target movement, none required if the shot was taken immediately. Elena's crosshairs settled on al-Rashid's center mass. At this range, precision body placement was impossible. Her goal was simply to ensure a hit somewhere within the vital zones. The bullet's energy, even after traveling over 3 kilometers, would be sufficient to neutralize the target. Her breathing reached the natural pause between inhalation and exhalation. The rifle felt perfectly balanced in her hands, an extension of her will rather than a separate tool. 73 times before, she had reached this moment of perfect stillness, where time seemed suspended between intention and action. The trigger broke with the crisp precision that defined professional-grade equipment. Elena felt the rifle's recoil as a gentle push against her shoulder, energy that represented the beginning of a 4-second journey through mountain air toward a target who would never see death approaching. Through her scope, Elena tracked the bullet's flight path through environmental indicators, dust movements, vegetation shifts, atmospheric disturbances that marked the projectile's passage through space. Years of experience had taught her to read these signs, following her shots across impossible distances. At 3,247 meters, visual confirmation of impact was challenging, even with powerful optics. Elena watched al-Rashid's figure through her scope, counting seconds until the bullet's arrival. 4 seconds felt like an eternity when measured against the lifetime of preparation that had led to this moment. The impact was subtle at such extreme range. A slight change in the target's posture, a barely perceptible shift in body position. But Elena's experienced eye recognized the signs immediately. After 4 seconds of flight time across mountain terrain, her 74th confirmed kill had found its mark. Measurement complete, she said calmly, beginning to pack her equipment with the methodical precision that had defined her entire career. Morrison approached from his observation point. Get what you needed, ma'am? Yes, Sergeant. Very precise measurements. The data will be extremely useful for future logistics planning. As Elena dismantled her rifle system and secured her equipment, activity began to increase around the compound below. Even at 3 kilometers, the sound of voices carried clearly in the mountain air. Al-Rashid's associates had discovered their leader's body, though they would never identify the source of his death. The genius of extreme-range elimination lay in its complete anonymity. No enemy forces would search for a sniper position over 3 kilometers away. No investigation would consider the possibility of accurate fire from such impossible distances. Ahmad Hassan al-Rashid's death would remain a mystery, attributed to internal conflicts or random violence rather than surgical military precision. Ready to head back to base? Morrison asked as Elena shouldered her equipment bags. Absolutely. I have reports to compile and recommendations to submit. Today's assessment provided excellent data. The return journey to base took 35 minutes across terrain that Elena now knew intimately. Every rock, every elevation change, every sight line had been memorized during her preparation for the mission. Such attention to detail had kept her alive through 12 years of combat operations. As they approached the base perimeter, Elena reflected on the assumptions that had greeted her arrival 24 hours earlier. Soldiers who had dismissed her as merely another civilian contractor would continue their duties, unaware that one of the most dangerous bomb makers in the region had been eliminated by someone they considered irrelevant to real military operations. The irony was perfect and deeply satisfying. Elena Rodriguez had spent her career operating in shadows, taking impossible shots that saved countless lives while receiving no recognition for her service. Today's mission exemplified everything she had become. A ghost who struck from impossible distances, protecting those who never knew protection was needed. Colonel Webb waited in the command tent as Elena approached to file her mission report. His expression revealed nothing, but the encrypted communication he had received 30 minutes earlier had confirmed what they both already knew. "How did your logistics assessment proceed, Ms. Rodriguez?" Webb asked with careful formality. "Very productively, Colonel. I was able to gather all the data required for my analysis. The supply route efficiency in this region should improve significantly based on today's measurements." Webb nodded slowly. "I trust your recommendations will address the security concerns that have been hampering operations in that sector. I believe the primary obstacles to smooth logistics operations have been permanently resolved, sir." The coded language satisfied requirements for operational security while acknowledging mission success. Elena Rodriguez had once again proven that the most dangerous assumptions were those made about unassuming people carrying extraordinary skills. As Elena prepared to depart the forward operating base, the same soldiers who had dismissed her arrival now barely noticed her departure. To them, she remained simply another civilian contractor completing another routine assignment. None of them would ever know that the ghost of 3,200 meters had walked among them, conducting business that would save American lives across the region. The legend would continue to grow in whispered conversations among special operations personnel, but Elena Rodriguez would return to her civilian cover, waiting for the next impossible shot that only she could take. 3 months had passed since Elena Rodriguez's successful elimination of Ahmad Hassan al-Rashid, and she had returned to her cover life as a civilian logistics consultant. Her small apartment in Virginia Beach showed no signs of her true profession, no military memorabilia, no weapons displays, nothing that would suggest the woman who lived there possessed skills that bordered on supernatural. The secure phone call came at 0200 hours on a Tuesday morning. Elena answered before the second ring, her mind instantly alert despite having been asleep moments before. Years of military training had conditioned her to transition from rest to operational readiness within seconds. "Ms. Rodriguez, this is Colonel Sarah Mitchell, Pentagon Operations. We have a situation requiring your specific expertise." Elena recognized the formal language that indicated a classified mission briefing. "I'm listening." "Colonel, there's been a development in Syria. 3 American contractors have been taken hostage by a group led by Yusuf al-Mahmoud. Intelligence indicates they're being held in a compound outside Aleppo. Traditional rescue operations have been deemed too risky due to terrain and civilian proximity." Elena was already reaching for her mission notebook, a habit that had served her well throughout her career. "Distance to target?" "Preliminary estimates put the optimal shooting position at approximately 2,800 meters from the compound. We need surgical precision, 1 shot to eliminate al-Mahmoud while minimizing risk to the hostages." "Timeline? Your wheels up in 6 hours. Cover story is humanitarian logistics assessment for refugee supply lines." Same protocols as your recent Afghanistan operation. Elena's mind raced through the tactical considerations. A 2,800-meter shot in Syrian terrain would present different challenges than her recent success in Afghanistan. Climate, elevation, and wind patterns would all affect ballistic calculations. More importantly, the presence of hostages meant absolute precision was mandatory. Any missed shot could result in civilian casualties. Understood, Colonel. I'll need specific equipment and intelligence packages. Everything's being prepared. Your reputation precedes you, Ms. Rodriguez. Command has complete confidence in your abilities. After ending the call, Elena began her pre-mission routine. Physical fitness assessment, equipment inventory, and mental preparation occupied the next 4 hours. By the time her transportation arrived, she had transformed from civilian contractor to the most feared sniper in modern military history. The flight to Syria took 18 hours with multiple stops and identity changes. Elena's documentation showed her as Sarah Martinez, a logistics coordinator for international relief services. Her equipment traveled separately through diplomatic channels, each piece carefully disguised as humanitarian supply assessment tools. Forward operating base. Damascus buzzed with activity as Elena's convoy arrived. Unlike her reception in Afghanistan, several personnel seemed to recognize her despite her civilian cover. Word of the Ghost's capabilities had spread through special operations circles, creating an aura of legend that preceded her missions. Major David Torres approached as Elena climbed from her transport vehicle. His expression mixed professional respect with barely concealed awe. He clearly knew exactly who he was meeting. "Ms. Martinez," Torres said, using her cover identity. "Welcome to FOB Damascus. I trust your journey was comfortable." "As comfortable as any humanitarian mission can be, Major," Elena replied, maintaining her cover story, despite recognizing the knowing look in Torres's eyes. "I understand there are significant logistical challenges in the region requiring assessment." "Indeed, the terrain presents unique difficulties for supply operations. Your expertise in long-range logistics coordination will be invaluable." Torres led Elena toward the command bunker while maintaining careful operational security. Other personnel watched their passage with interest, though none openly acknowledged Elena's true purpose. The fiction of humanitarian logistics assessment provided necessary cover for an operation that couldn't officially exist. In the secure briefing room, Torres spread satellite photographs across a steel table. The target compound appeared as a cluster of buildings surrounded by open terrain that offered both challenges and opportunities for extreme-range engagement. "Intelligence confirms 3 American hostages are being held in the eastern building," Torres explained, pointing to the structures visible in the photographs. "Yusuf al-Mahmoud maintains a routine of appearing on this balcony each morning around 0700 local time." Elena studied the imagery with professional intensity. The compound's layout, surrounding terrain, and potential shooting positions all factored into her tactical planning. Unlike her recent mission in Afghanistan, this operation would require even greater precision due to hostage proximity. Distance from optimal shooting position to target balcony? 2,847 meters, according to our latest surveys. The position offers clear sight lines, but requires a 3-kilometer approach through hostile territory. Elena traced potential routes on the satellite photos. Her mind automatically calculated approach times, concealment opportunities, and extraction procedures. Years of operating behind enemy lines had honed these planning skills to razor sharpness. Local security patterns? Al-Mahmoud's group maintains irregular patrols, but they're focused on ground-level threats. They have no expectation of engagement from the distances you operate at. The tactical situation was both challenging and ideal. Enemy forces wouldn't consider the possibility of accurate fire from nearly 3 kilometers away, providing operational security for Elena's mission. However, the extreme range would test every aspect of her skill and equipment. Environmental conditions: desert climate, minimal precipitation expected. Wind patterns are variable, but generally predictable during morning hours. Temperature differential between night and day can affect ballistic calculations. Elena nodded, already beginning the complex mental calculations required for success. Syrian desert conditions would present different challenges than Afghan mountains, requiring adjustments to her shooting techniques and equipment settings. When do I establish position? Tonight. Eero 200 departure gives you time to reach the shooting position and conduct final preparations before Al-Mahmoud's morning appearance. Over the next 12 hours, Elena prepared for what would become her most technically demanding shot. The rifle system provided for this mission represented the absolute pinnacle of long-range precision technology. Every component had been selected and calibrated for extreme distance accuracy in desert conditions. As evening approached, Elena conducted final equipment checks while maintaining her humanitarian cover story. Soldiers on base continued to treat her as a civilian contractor, though several seemed aware that her presence indicated something significant was planned. Sergeant Lisa Chen approached as Elena organized her gear. Unlike the dismissive attitudes Elena had encountered elsewhere, Chen's expression showed professional curiosity rather than condescension. "Excuse me, ma'am, but that's some seriously advanced surveying equipment you have there. Must be some important supply route assessments you're conducting." Elena looked up from her rifle case, which to Chen appeared as sophisticated surveying tools. "Precision is crucial in humanitarian logistics, Sergeant. When you're calculating supply routes for refugee populations, mistakes can cost lives." "I imagine so. Though I have to say, that level of precision equipment seems almost military grade." "The principles are similar," Elena replied carefully. "Whether it's military operations or humanitarian relief, accuracy and attention to detail make the difference between success and failure." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Well, ma'am, I hope your assessments help improve supply operations in the region. God knows the civilian population needs all the help they can get." "That's exactly the goal, Sergeant. Protecting innocent lives is what this is all about." At 0200 hours, Elena departed the base in a modified civilian vehicle that would take her within 2 kilometers of her shooting position. The final approach would be conducted on foot through terrain that challenged even experienced military personnel. The 3-kilometer infiltration took 2 hours across rocky desert that offered minimal concealment. Elena moved with the fluid precision that had kept her alive through dozens of similar missions. Every step was carefully planned, every pause strategically timed to avoid potential observation. By 0500 hours, she had reached the optimal shooting position and begun final preparations. The hide was natural, a depression among large rocks that provided complete concealment while offering unobstructed views of the target compound. From this vantage point, the hostage location appeared as tiny buildings in the distance, barely visible without powerful optics. Elena's rifle system settled into position with mechanical precision. The bipod legs adjusted to exact specifications, the scope aligned perfectly with the target area, and every adjustment dial calibrated for the specific conditions she faced. Years of practice had made this process as natural as breathing. Range confirmation using laser measurement verified the distance at 2,147 meters, slightly shorter than her record shot, but still at the extreme edge of practical accuracy. Elena began the complex process of environmental assessment that would determine her shot's success or failure. Wind speed and direction required careful observation of dust movements, vegetation response, and atmospheric indicators across the entire 2,847-meter engagement zone. Temperature gradients between her position and the target would affect air density, altering the bullet's flight path in subtle but measurable ways. The mathematics involved were staggering. Bullet drop over 2,147 meters would exceed 35 feet if not properly compensated. Wind drift could deflect the projectile several feet in any direction. The Coriolis effect, though minimal at this range, still required consideration for absolute precision. At 06:45 hours, movement appeared on the compound's eastern balcony. Elena's scope tracked the emerging figure while her mind processed the final calculations required for the shot. After weeks of surveillance, intelligence had confirmed this was Yusuf al-Mahmoud's daily routine. Through her optics, al-Mahmoud appeared as a dark silhouette against the building's light-colored walls. Positive identification required the powerful scope that Elena had specifically requested for this mission. The man responsible for countless terrorist attacks and 3 American hostages stood casually on his balcony, protected by what he believed was absolute distance. Elena's breathing settled into the familiar rhythm that had guided her through 74 previous successful engagements. Her pulse slowed to combat tempo, her vision narrowed to the precise focus required for impossible shots, and her mind cleared of everything except the target and the calculations required to reach him. Wind conditions had stabilized over the past 30 minutes, approximately 6 kilometers per hour from the southeast, consistent across multiple measurement points between her position and the target. Elena made final adjustments to her scope's windage and elevation controls. At 2,847 meters, the bullet would travel for approximately 3.7 seconds before impact. During that time, environmental conditions could shift, the target could move, or any number of variables could affect the shot's outcome. Success required perfect timing and flawless execution. Elena's crosshairs settled on al-Mahmoud's center mass. At extreme range, precise body placement was impossible. Her goal was simply to ensure a fatal hit within the vital zones. The 338 Lapua Magnum cartridge retained sufficient energy even after traveling nearly 3 kilometers to guarantee target neutralization. The trigger broke with familiar precision, releasing the bullet that would travel across hostile desert to eliminate one of the region's most dangerous terrorists. Elena tracked the projectile's flight through environmental indicators while counting seconds until impact. Through her scope, she watched al-Mahmoud's figure during the bullet's 3.7-second journey. Years of experience had taught her to read the subtle signs of successful engagement, even at impossible distances. The impact was definitive. Al-Mahmoud's sudden collapse confirmed Elena's 75th successful elimination. Activity around the compound increased immediately as his associates discovered their leader's death, though none would ever suspect the true source of the fatal shot. Within minutes of the shot, Elena began dismantling her equipment with practiced efficiency. The hostage rescue team would receive their signal to advance, knowing that the primary threat to civilian safety had been permanently eliminated. As Elena began her extraction from the shooting position, encrypted communications confirmed what she already knew. The 3 American hostages had been successfully recovered without casualties, their rescue made possible by the surgical elimination of their captor from an impossible distance. Elena Rodriguez had once again proven that assumptions about capability and danger were often fatally wrong. The ghost of 32200m had struck again, saving American lives through skills that existed in fewer than a dozen people worldwide. The return journey to base would take 4 hours across terrain that Elena now knew intimately. By the time she arrived, her official cover story would be complete. Another successful humanitarian logistics assessment that had somehow coincided with a successful hostage rescue operation. None of the soldiers who dismissed her as merely a civilian contractor would ever know that the most dangerous sniper in modern military history had walked among them, conducting business that saved American lives through precision that challenged the very boundaries of human capability. The legend of the ghost would continue to grow in whispered conversations among those few who knew the truth, but Elena Rodriguez would return to her civilian cover, waiting for the next impossible shot that only she could take.